Now, I know with the advent of streaming services for watching movies, many people out of convenience just watch things that are streamed over the internet now. But I'm a person that still likes the DVDs. I like to pop the actual disc in there, but it's not because I like the physical disc. It's because there's things that come with that disc that don't come on the streaming services. All right? Specifically, there's the menu that you get to navigate. And within that menu, there's the one part that I like the best. The bonus features. You guys, anybody else like bonus features on your DVDs? Okay, you like to see, of course, we all love the blooper reels, the outtakes and the things where people goofed up. But the part that really draws me in is the making of the movie, the behind the scenes. I want to see, how did they come up with the location that they were going to use? What sort of special effects did they do? Why did they choose the costumes or the particular sets? How did they organize the stunts? I like to see all of the making of behind the scenes. For any of you who have been involved in stage productions or in drama in high school or anything like that, you know that on the stage, there's the part that happens out in front of the curtain. But behind the curtain, there's a whole lot of activity that's going on as people are scrambling around to move different sets and pieces and to move the curtains and to handle the lights. There's all that happens behind the scenes so that what is happening in front of the curtain on the stage runs smoothly and happens just the way that it's supposed to. Well, in our life, if you look around right now, at each other, here in this church, if you look around outside, what we are seeing is we're seeing the part in front of the curtain. But there is another part that is real, that is every bit as real as what happens in front of the curtain that we can see with our five senses. We can sense and smell and touch and taste. That which is in front is only part of the reality. Behind the curtain, there is an entire different reality that is going on. The spiritual reality, but it is every bit as real. Even though we don't see it. We usually, often don't even sense it. But it's real. But every once in a while, God will allow us to see behind the curtain. He pulls it open a bit for us so that we can see what is happening on the other side. And that is what Daniel experiences in Daniel chapter 10. So you can begin turning there. That's where we're going to be this morning, is Daniel chapter 10. As Daniel gets a glimpse behind the curtain. Now, to bring us up to speed with Daniel, the first part of the book was the historical section that talked about how he and other Hebrews were taken captive and exiled away from Israel off to Babylon, hundreds of miles away, and they were forced into this other culture and indoctrinated to basically serve as slaves. But Daniel was a person who rose through the ranks there and was given a very high position within that land. Now, that's the first half of the book. The second half of the book is a catalog of some dreams and visions that Daniel was given that predicted the future as it was going to unfold. And last week we learned about how it is, especially at the end of Daniel chapter 9, there's kind of the backbone for biblical prophecy on which everything else hangs. Everything else kind of fits into that. Well, today what we're going to see is something that happened just a few years later. Just a couple years after that last vision that he had, and how God pulls back the curtain so that he can see some spiritual realities as well as understand some future realities that are coming. So that's what we're going to get into this morning. But first of all, let's get the setting as to where this takes place. So we're going to look at Daniel chapter 9, and we're going to go through verses 1 through 4 for starters. Oops, not 9. Let's try Daniel 10. Daniel 10, yeah. We're not going to repeat last week's sermon. Daniel 10, verses 1 through 4. In the third year of Cyrus, the king of Persia, a message was revealed to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar. And the message was true and one of great conflict, but he understood the message and had an understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, had been mourning for 3 entire weeks. I did not eat any tasty food, nor did meat or wine enter my mouth, nor did I use any ointment at all until the entire 3 weeks were completed. On the 24th day of the first month, while I was by the bank of the great river, that is the Tigris, and we're going to stop right there for just a moment, because these are verses that the first few times I read through this chapter, I'm going to be thorough, I'm going to go ahead and read them, but it's just times and dates. It doesn't really make that much of a difference. I don't know if you guys are this way when you read through in Scripture, but you often just kind of tune out when it gets to those geography and time references. But here we need to not tune out because this is very important. And I didn't understand this until about halfway through my study this week. And I was like, oh, this is really important. And we're going to look at it from 2 aspects. We're going to look at it from the aspect of the calendar, and we're going to look at it from the aspect of the newspaper. All right? So first, the calendar. It talks about how this is in the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia. Okay, during the third year of Cyrus, there were some events that were happening. All right, and we're going to learn about those with the newspaper in just a moment. But if you look on verse 4 there, it says the 24th day of the first month. Now, the first month in the Jewish calendar is when the people celebrated Passover. That's when, they celebrate the Exodus from Egypt, when God delivered them through the sacrifice of the lamb. The doorway was painted with the blood, and the angel of death came over and passed over them after the first 9 plagues. That was the 10th plague, and then God led them out through the Red Sea, drowned all of Pharaoh's army, and it rescued them. It's like Independence Day for the nation of Israel. It was an exciting time. It was a celebration. The Passover followed by the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That all happens during the first month. It culminates on day 21 of the first month. Well, when is Daniel having this experience here? He's talking about the 24th day. On the 24th day, he had already been fasting for 3 whole weeks. He took celebration season and he turned it into a season of fasting. What would cause Daniel to forego the celebration and say, I'm going to fast and seek the Lord? I was in mourning. I was grieving during that time. Well, we looked at the calendar. Now let's look at the newspaper. If we were to pick up a copy of the Babylonian Times, if they had such a thing back then, you know how when you open the newspaper, okay, front page is usually headline story. Often it's something local, at least in our paper. And you have to flip several pages back into the paper before you find the stories about national or international news. Okay, you flip to the international section of the Babylonian Times, and you're going to see an article in there that talks about how Cyrus had told the Jews to go back to Israel and to go ahead and begin rebuilding the temple. Well, in the third year of Cyrus is when that happened, that the Jews were going back to Jerusalem, and they were going to rebuild the temple that had been destroyed, reestablish the worship of the one true God back in Israel. Now, Daniel, being an old man at this point, in his 80s, he probably was not up for that kind of journey, which explains why he was still back in Babylon at this time. But he probably had received some reports because the Jews were not having it very good back in Israel. As they went back to rebuild the temple, and you can read about this in the book of Ezra, there was a lot of opposition. Because the Israelites had been gone for 70 years, well, that land didn't just stay vacant. Other people had moved in. And the people who had moved in and settled in over the last 70 years were not very keen on giving up their control of that area. So when the Jews came back, there was a lot of resistance. You guys have heard about the Golan Heights and the West Bank in Israel and how there's this fighting between the Palestinians and the Jews and stuff, okay? And they talk about settlers in the West Bank. Okay, that's the same sort of issue. Whose territory is this? Who are the settlers coming in? Well, they're coming in, but there's already people there. It causes conflict. Exact same thing is happening here. And so there are campaigns of discouragement. There are threats that are being made against the Jews. They are having a hard time of it. And we learn eventually, a little bit after this time, that they get so threatened and laws get passed and they're manipulating things such that the locals are actually able to bring a stop to the work on the temple. But that opposition is happening right around this time. Now, we're not told why Daniel was mourning and fasting for 3 weeks. But I think the likelihood is very good that it's over the condition of his people and the opposition that they are receiving to reestablishing themselves in the Jewish homeland. God, we're trying to get back on track. We're trying to do what you want us to do, but there's an enemy fighting us. And so he's going to the Lord in prayer. Now, again, we're not told that's definitely the reason why, but I think that's very likely, given the context, that it's about the plight of the Jewish people at that time. So we have to understand what it is that motivated him to go to the Lord in prayer, to really seek the Lord in prayer. When things get rough for you, that's often when we pray the most. If you guys are like me, when things are going easy, my prayer life kind of fades off a little bit. But when something gets bad, when there's a health crisis, a financial crisis, a relational crisis, any other national crisis, that's when I go to the Lord in prayer. That's when my prayer life ramps up. His prayer life is very vibrant at this point. And so there's something on his heart as he's come to the Lord. So that's the setting. Now, what we're going to see is we're going to look as Daniel gets a glimpse behind the curtain at the spiritual realm, and we're going to experience it along with him in three aspects, okay? what did Daniel see? What did Daniel feel? And then what did Daniel hear? Okay, so let's start with what did Daniel see? Okay, and we're going to go here now to verse 5. I lifted my eyes and looked, and behold, there was a certain man dressed in linen, whose waist was girded with a belt of pure gold of Uphaz. His body was also like beryl. His face had the appearance of lightning. His eyes were like flaming torches. His arms and feet were like the gleam of polished bronze. And the sound of his words were like the sound of a tumult or a roaring. Now I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, while the men who were with me did not see the vision. Nevertheless, a great dread fell on them, and they ran away and hid themselves. So I was left alone and saw this great vision, and no strength was left in me. We'll finish that part there in just a minute. Right? So Daniel sees this vision, and what is he seeing? Now it says that he saw a man, but you can tell from this description here, this is no ordinary man. This is not a human. He is seeing an angelic heavenly figure, and it is absolutely amazing to him. Now, angels, we know, are greater and more powerful than what we are. As a matter of fact, we're told that in 2 Peter, 2 Peter 2:11, where it says, the angels who are greater in might and power do not bring a reviling judgment. And it's talking about some kind of heavenly conflict going on there. But what I want us to get out of that verse is angels are greater than us. Angels are more powerful than us. And that's who he is encountering right here. But we can also take comfort from knowing, and we're told this in Hebrews, that it says, are not all angels ministering spirits sent to serve those, render service to those who will inherit salvation? Angels are greater and more powerful than us, but if we are on God's side, those angels are on our side too. Now, when angels see when a person greets an angel or sees an angel, okay, there's usually something that comes out of that angel's mouth first off. Okay, we've all been taught the proper way to greet somebody, okay, whether it's over the phone or in person. You know, you extend your hand, hi, my name is, what is your name? There's standard greetings that we give, right? What's an angel's standard first words out of the gate when they greet somebody? Don't be afraid. Fear not. Don't freak out, right? Why? Because that's our natural reaction to seeing an angel. If I saw somebody, okay, who, showed up at my door, and the person is glowing like lightning, their eyes are flames, all right? They're wearing a gold belt, and when they speak, it sounds like I'm at Niagara Falls, right? I would be freaking out too. Daniel is freaking out because he is getting an experience that is out of the norm. He's scared. This is what Daniel saw. So what is it that Daniel felt because of what he saw? And that's what we're going to look at next. I actually started reading it there in verse 8. Okay, I was left alone, saw this great vision. No strength was left in me, for my natural color turned to a deathly pallor, and I retained no strength. But I heard the sound of his words, and as soon as I heard the sound of his words, I fell into a deep sleep on my face, with my face to the ground. He passed out cold. It's really interesting. You've seen this on videos before. Maybe you've even experienced where something shocks you so much that you just faint dead away. I saw a lady coming in to a room, and it was it was a surprise birthday party. So the lights come on, everybody yells, "Surprise!" And she just keels right over because she wasn't expecting it. It was too much sensory overload. Okay. That's what he's experienced here. He faints dead away. Of course, he'd been fasting and praying for 3 weeks. It doesn't say it was a complete fast, but the guy was probably weak from the intensity of the prayer, the lack of nourishment, plus the fact of this experience. He faints dead away. What did he feel? He felt awe. And if God's going to open that curtain for us, chances are it's going to blow our socks off. We are going to be amazed at what we see on the other side. It's not something we're just going to take in stride. It is going to have a physical effect on us. Okay? So, that's what Daniel saw and what Daniel felt. But now let's look at what it is that Daniel heard. Start in verse 10. Well, actually, I guess I should put that in the felt part there. Then, behold, a hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. And then he said to me, "O Daniel, man of high esteem, understand the words I'm about to tell you, and stand upright, for I have now been sent to you." And when he had spoken this word to me, I stood up trembling. And then he said to me, do not be afraid, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart on understanding this and on humbling yourself before God, your words were heard. And I've come in response to your words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia was withstanding me for 21 days, and then behold, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been left there with the kings of Persia. Now I have come to give you an understanding of what will happen to your people in the latter days, for the vision pertains to days yet in the future. So he is given this message. Now, what did Daniel feel? I forgot to mention this part earlier. He felt a touch. Also, he not only felt the astonishment that caused him to faint dead away, but he felt a touch. As the angel touched him, woke him up. There's three things that he has there as that angel touches him. Wake up, stand up, and listen up. Wake up, Daniel. Okay, I know you're astonished, but wake up. And then he gives him strength to be able to stand up. Starts on his hands and knees. He just kind of crawls back up, and then he eventually stands up. But why? Because God has a message for him. He has something he wants him to know. And this is something that I think is important for us to understand. If God has a message for you, if he has something he wants to give you, he will also give you, along with it, the strength to receive the message. Sometimes God tells us something that is so heavy, so immense, so powerful, that we need his strength in order to endure it. Sometimes it's a good message, an encouragement. It's going to shock us with the good that God is going to bring our way. But sometimes God gives us a warning. Hey, this difficult thing is coming. You're going to suffer a loss, a struggle. And as that message comes, we need God's strength to be able to endure that as well. Daniel was given strength in order to receive the message. We need to have God's strength in order to receive it as well. Now, as Daniel is hearing these words, though, let's pick these apart just one at a time. Let's start in verse 11. The first thing that Daniel receives in this message is reassurance. He says, Daniel, man of high esteem, you are highly esteemed, highly favored. God looks at you and smiles. It's important for us to remember that. When we get a glimpse behind the curtain, if you're one of God's children, it doesn't matter what you see on the other side, know how God feels about you. He loves you. It might be a tough message. It might be an encouraging message. Know that you are highly esteemed, that God loves you and cares for you. You are highly esteemed. You know how we know that? I can tell that for certain because of the fact he paid an awful lot for you. He paid the blood of his son, Jesus. And if he's going to pay that much for you, you know that you are highly esteemed. You are highly favored by him. All right? In verse 12, though, this is the truth that we need to understand there, is the responsiveness of God. Okay? It's not only the reassurance of his love for us, but the responsiveness of God. From the first day, Daniel, that you started praying, God heard you. God answered. God sent an answer right away. God hears your prayers. If you are his child, he is attentive and listening for your prayers. Know that he is responsive to you. He's not reluctant to respond. Now, it might be a while until you hear a response. It might be a while until you receive a response. But God hears right away. God is paying attention and listening to your prayers because he loves you and you are treasured. Okay, verse 13. This reminds us, this is about the prince of the kingdom of Persia. This reminds us that there is also resistance. Resistance. There is resistance to our prayers. What did it say? It says that he was resisted, this angel that is the messenger to Daniel was resisted 21 days. 21 days before he could get to Daniel with the answer. Have you ever had it where you saw something happening and you longed to intervene, but you couldn't do a thing about it? At the top of the stairs, okay, we have a ranch house, but we have a basement. At the top of the stairs, when our kids were little, I was standing there. I had Isaiah in my arms, okay, real little guy, okay? Elizabeth was just a toddler, and I don't remember exactly how it happened, but I remember at the top of this flight of stairs, I think there's 13 stairs to the bottom, okay? I've got Isaiah in my arms, and Elizabeth is tumbling head over heels down those stairs, and there wasn't a thing I could do about it. I couldn't jump after her because I'd lose him, you know? I couldn't engage quick enough, so I had to watch the disaster unfold as she tumbled down the steps. Now, fortunately, when she smacked the bottom, she stood up immediately and started wailing. And I'm like, okay, she's fine. Yes, she might be hurt, she might be scared, but she's not injured so much that she can't respond. She's not unconscious or anything. I had to watch it unfold and couldn't do a thing about it because I was being kept back. In this case, because of the fact that I was holding one of my other kids. Okay? In this situation, this angel had been dispatched day one when Daniel started praying. How long had Daniel been praying? Remember that from earlier? 3 weeks. How long was this angel detained? 21 days. God sent the response immediately, but Daniel didn't receive the response immediately. God hears your prayers. God is responsive to your prayers. God, where are you? He may have already responded. It just may not be there yet. Why? Because there's a battle going on. There is a spiritual conflict. If you pull back that curtain and you look through there, there is the sound of battle. There is the sound of trumpets. There's the sound of swords clashing as these heavenly beings are going at it with each other. This angel was detained 21 days from getting to Daniel, but the answer was already given. Remember, saints, when we don't hear God's answer to our prayers, there can be a whole lot of reasons behind that. And it may not be that God has said, I'm not answering that yet. It may be the answer's already on its way. It just hadn't got there yet. You're still waiting for the post office to deliver. Persevere in prayer. Because honestly, as I'm talking about this, where we're peeling back the curtain and peeking back there at what's going on with that spiritual realm, that's not the point of this morning's message. What was Daniel doing? He was praying. That's the point of this morning's message. Don't give up in prayer. Do your part to battle in prayer. Don't give up. This is about persevering in prayer. Daniel, 3 weeks he had been going. And who knows how much longer he would have been going had God not sent the answer. He was not giving up. Don't give up. The person that you are praying, whose life is going to be transformed, you're praying for God to rescue them, don't give up. The person that you're praying for their healing, do not give up. Unless God says no, unless God says, don't ask anymore, unless that person dies and goes to heaven, don't give up. If they're breathing, you keep praying. Don't give up. Now, there's one more thing I want us to see, though, in those verses that we just read, and that's in verse 14. And that's the revelation. Now I have come to you with to give you an understanding of what's going to happen. Daniel, here's the message. I've come in answer, and I want to give you that answer now. And we're not actually even going to get to the answer this morning. There's a few more verses here, but we don't even actually get to the answer. What I want us to understand, though, here is that when we pray, God listens, God answers, and keep praying until you receive that answer. So I'm going to run through those again here, just the overview of that. Verse 11, you've got the reassurance. Verse 12, the responsiveness. Verse 13 is the resistance. And verse 14 is the revelation. Sorry, I don't have those up on the screens for us this morning. Now, let's go ahead and keep reading. We're going to finish out this passage, and then we've got just one or two more lessons that we need to understand about the spiritual realm and about prayer. Okay? Let's go to verse 15. When he had spoken to me according to these words, I turned my face toward the ground and became speechless. And behold, one who resembled a human being was touching my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spoke and said to him who was standing before me, "Oh, my Lord, as a result of this vision, anguish has come upon me, and I have retained no strength. For how can such a servant of my Lord talk with such as my Lord? As for me, there remains just now no strength in me, nor has any breath been left in me." Then this one with human appearance touched me again and strengthened me. He said, "O man of high esteem, do not be afraid. Peace be with you. Take courage and be courageous." Now as soon as he spoke to me, I received strength and said, "May my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me." Did you notice all the times of Daniel's weakness and all the times that he has given ability? The angel touched me, raised me up, touched my lips, spoke peace to me. This angel is ministering to him in his time of weakness so that he can receive the answer that he has been persevering and seeking for. Last two verses. Verse 20. Then he said, "Do you understand why I came to you? But I shall now return to fight against the Prince of Persia. So I am going forth, and behold, the Prince of Greece is about to come. However, I will tell you what is inscribed in the writing of truth. Yet there is no one who stands firmly with me against these forces, except Michael, your prince." Okay, you just had all this encounter, Daniel. Do you understand why I came? I've got a message for you. But I'm in the midst of a battle here. He left the battle. He was detained by the Prince of Persia. Now, we hear prince, don't think royalty. Think one in charge of something. And when it says prince, think of an angel who has been given jurisdiction or dominion over a particular area. So there was apparently a prince, okay, a demonic person, a demonic being, over the Persian Empire. And Michael was your prince, the prince of your people. He's a prince over Israel. He is the angel who is watching over Israel. There are apparently spiritual dominions, all right? If you remember in Ephesians chapter 4, okay, this is not going to be on the screens. Ephesians chapter 4, it talks about the spiritual warfare that we go through and how it is that we are to be equipped with the armor of God. You guys remember that? Now, this is Ephesians chapter 6, okay, verse 12. "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood." It's not against people, right? "But it is against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, and against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places." All these different terms that are used for demonic spirits. All these dark forces that we are against. Just like in a military, you have, the private and sergeant and captain and corporal and general and lieutenant and all these different, they are over different amounts of soldiers, and one's given charge over this area, one's given charge over this post or this base or over this beachhead, right? It seems that in the spiritual realm it's the same way, where there is a division of labor and authority. And here, Daniel was given a glimpse behind the curtain and see that there's warfare that is happening over entire kingdoms. And there was going to be, the Prince of Persia was there. There's a Prince of Greece who's going to come. These angelic forces are at work. Daniel, I want you to see this. And this angel stepped away from the battle. Daniel, I'm going to give you a message. And then I'm going to go back to the battle. Daniel, you're a man of high esteem. You are a prayer warrior. You are fighting in this fight as well. Now, we need to understand that. We are on one side of the curtain. The spiritual realm is on the other side of the curtain. But you know what? Your voice is heard on both sides. When you speak in prayer, I can hear you, right? If I pray, you can hear me. But you know what? It's heard on the other side as well. And it has an effect on the other side. God has called us to be ones who are praying. In the book of Ephesians, I want to say it's 4:13. Can't remember. Not going to take time to find it right now. I'll put it with the sermon when I post it. It talks about how there's a man named Epaphras. And it says that he is always laboring or striving earnestly for you, the Ephesian Christians, in prayer. That word striving or laboring earnestly is the Greek word agonizo. Sound like any English word we have? Agonize. He is agonizing in prayer for you. He is persevering in prayer for you. He's in a wrestling match with these spiritual forces for you. Know that you are not alone. There are people that are wrestling in prayer for you. And also know that God is calling some of you to be those who are going to wrestle in prayer also. He wants people who are going to agonize in prayer on behalf of others and not give up. Now, there is a division, which has kind of been coming down lately, but a division in sports, okay, between men's sports and women's sports. Now, some people are trying to confuse those things right now, but typically there's a difference, right? Because men have an advantage in most physical contests over women. Okay, not necessarily everything, but most of them, okay? The bigger, stronger skeletal structure, muscle mass, cardiovascular capacity. Men just usually are able to be faster and stronger and jump higher and all that kind of stuff, all right? But when you get outside of those physical contests it kind of evens out, okay? Chess match, you might be either one, okay? Archery competitions, well, women can be really good at those as well, okay? Other kinds of competitions, we might be matched. Spelling bee, watch out, guys. Those women are going to kick your behinds in those, all right? There is a contest. There is a kind of competition that goes on where men and women are completely equal, and that is in this spiritual wrestling match. When it comes to prayer, there are some women in the heavenly realms, you better watch out because they know how to pray. You guys have heard of Mama Bear, right? All right, you get between a mom and her kids, watch out because sweet little mama, she becomes a raging grizzly if you mess with her kids, right? I very much want to honor those moms who wrestle for their kids in prayer. There's a song that's called Mama Used to Burn the Midnight Oil. I don't know if you've ever heard that. Mama used to burn the midnight oil down on her knees in prayer. You ask her why she did it? She did it because she cared. Our prayer is motivated by love, and you wrestle. Don't give up. On behalf of your kids, if your kids are struggling, pray for them. Your spouse is struggling, pray for them. Your loved one, your friend, person down the street, the stranger that you've seen and your heart just goes out to them because you can tell that they're lost, they're struggling, they're hurting. Pray for them. When you see in our land laws that are being passed, edicts that are put in place that are going against what God wants, okay? It could be the death of the unborn, the oppression of the poor, immigration policies, or whatever. You go through the list. Just watch the news. Turn it into prayer requests. There's all kinds of things. They may seem like they are so entrenched and so unstoppable. You pray, God's going to make a difference. You pray, God can tear that down. God can dispatch whatever angels that he needs to remedy that situation, be it for an individual, be it for a nation. Don't give up. Be one who is going to agonize in prayer, who's going to wrestle it to the ground, and persevere. I want to read you about a church. We're going to close with this story. Walt, you can come to prepare to lead us in our closing song. This is from the Preacher's Commentary series. I was a minister, only a few months old at this particular church, when an old lady sent for me. And when I called, she said, I've been praying for many years that God would send a man a little bit out of the usual to do a work for the Lord here. And from what I hear, you're an answer to my prayer, she told me. I've been a widow for 17 years. Formerly, I had a Bible class of over 100 girls, many of whom have since gone on to the mission field. Yet, it was only after my dear husband died, and I was by then rather frail and able only to sit at my fireside and pray, that the Lord gave me this burden. And he said to me, you have served me long with these girls and in your local church, but this is the task of your life. Reserved for you in your 80s, you have to pray for something in Aberdeen, the particular community where they were. Moms, dads, doesn't matter. Children, teens, adults, young parents, senior citizens, confined to a bed or a wheelchair. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how frail your body is. You can be a champion wrestler, a champion combatant in this battle. And know the power that is at your disposal, because it is the power of God. You're simply asking him to exercise it. Do not give up in prayer. Wrestle it to the ground until God either takes you home or he gives the answer. As we have this final song, I would encourage you to pray afresh, surrendering these prayer points to the Lord and recommitting yourself. I am going to stay in the battle until the very end.
We cry.